In nomine. Do 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 do. In nomine. Do 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 do. In nomine. Do 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 do. In nomine. Do 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 do. In nomine. Do 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 do. In nomine. Do 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 do. Hi, I'm Brian, and I'm the Theoretical Gamer, and today's classic game review is a game from the 90s called In Nomine. Good and evil, life and death, rock and roll. Back cover. They are very much like us. Some seek to do good, others corrupt and destroy. Some set out to do one thing but accomplish another. Some are fiercely devoted to their work. Some doubt that they really make a difference. And some wonder in the small hours of the night if they pick the right sides. They have great powers for good or evil, but they are merely pawns of greater powers still. They are very much like us. In Nomine is basically a game about angels and demons fighting a secret war in the modern world for the souls of humanity. Behind the scenes where we can't see it, they're there, masquerading as human. They're trying to save us or damn us. Some of us know about it. Some of us are clued in. But most of us, we have to, either believe or not believe based on faith or reason. A little history. Back in the day, there was a game in the far mythical land of France and it was written by a man who went by the name of Croc, C-R-O-C, and he created a game called In Nomine Satanas, where you played demons living in the modern world. He followed this up with a game called Magna Veritas, which was in the same world. It was in the flip side. You played angels. These were collected into a complete set, which was cleverly called In Nomine Satanas / Magna Veritas. It was basically, it was never translated into English, and I don't speak French, but I've basically heard what it was about. It was basically a scathing satire on religion in general and the Catholic Church in particular. And a lot of people love it. A lot of people will swear by it and say it's hilarious and fantastic and, and skewers organized religion just like it deserves. But I've also heard it said that if the game at some point had a choice of, on the one hand, maintaining a coherent setting and with consistency and so forth, or taking a cheap shot, it would go for the cheap shot every time. Now, Steve Jackson heard about this game, inquired a bit, and did not get the rights to translate it, but they did get the right to adapt it. So they recreated it, and they came up with a In Nomine, which is basically a Latin incomplete sentence fragment, in the name of. You can fill in the blank after that. In the name of who, in the name of what. What is it? It is a setting where you play angels and demons in the service of archangels or demon princes, basically trying to, save or damn humanity, like I've said. The system is, I will say that it's quirky. There's some aspects of it that I really like. There are a lot of people have a lot of issues with the setting. There is no game balance. I've talked about this in a previous video about game balance, and it kind of does what I like with game balance, in that it's a point-buy system where the points are mainly there to keep you from having all the things. It basically makes you look at your character and say, okay, this is important, and this I can buy later as I improve, blah blah blah. Whereas it makes no attempt at making balanced characters. Now, using this, to give you an example, using this system, you can create a character whose hit points are as low as 2 at the beginning of the game, or as high as 144. So, yeah. Um, it's rather interesting in that there is a kind of weird race and class in that um, basically I'll explain the system. I'll describe the characters, because one interesting aspect of it is like character stats reflect things within the world of Nomine, which, like, you have a score called Essence, which is your celestial power that you can use to influence roles or power abilities. And they talk about essence within the game. You have things called forces, which basically give you the rough power level of your character. He's a 9-force character. He's a 9-force, or he's a 5-force human. And they talk about that within the setting. You know, like the forces are basically the geometry of the soul and how, you know, that sort of thing. And there's a very strong musical theme. The races that you play are, the angels are called choirs. Their demonic equivalents are called bands. They, instead of like spells, they have things called songs. They special powers granted by your superiors are called attunements. Like I said, there's a very strong musical theme throughout the entire game. Basically, the core mechanic is something which they... I thought it was cute when I first saw it, but, you know, some people might say that it's trying too hard to be overly clever. They call it the D666, where you roll 3 6-sided dice, right, as part of the core mechanic. 2 of them are basically 2d6 that determine whether you succeed or failed. The third one is a different color and is the check digit, and it ranges from 1 to 6 to determine how well you succeeded or how badly you failed. And if you roll 111 or a 666, you know, the Holy Trinity and the number of the beast, you get an intervention. Basically, God or the devil nudges things to make shit happen. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing depends on what side you are. Obviously, if you're an angel, a 666 is going to seriously fuck up your day. The game is... I like the fact that it doesn't take itself too seriously. You read it, and it's, you know, it's like a game like this could easily go in the direction of trying very, very hard to be grim and overly serious. And you can play it that way. You can play it very much like The Prophecy, that old movie with Christopher Walken in it. You know, that, you know, very dark and nasty view of angels using humans as chess pieces, that sort of thing. Or you could go for something along the lines of Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, or Dogma, the Kevin Smith movie. You know, like a much more light-hearted version of it. The game, you could like have a very deep role-playing experience where you're trying to save people's souls, or you could just go out and just do some demon bashing. You can totally play demons if you want to be on the side of evil. I don't see that being a fun game in the long term. You know, maybe a one-shot where you just want to cut loose, but for a long-term game, I kind of have to agree with what my character is doing to a certain extent. So yeah, I kind of got to be a good guy. Race and class. This comes down to choir or band, and is your kind of your race and your word. Now, angels do not have free will in the same sense that humans do. They have volition, they have autonomy, but ultimately, if a human screws up, he can feel guilty. He can try to make up for it, but ultimately he will still be human. He will not break. His soul may be tarnished, but it will still be a human soul. An angel, on the other hand, no. If they screw up too badly, they can fall. and become a twisted parody of what they once were. There are different choirs of angels. The most holy are the seraphim. They are the highest, they are the closest to God, and therefore the farthest from human. They don't get us at all. They may think that, they may accept the word of God that humanity is special and must be shepherded and protected and all that, but that doesn't mean they have to like us. Every choir has what they call a dissonance condition. That is, they have a resonance and a dissonance condition, again with the musical theme. The resonance is basically their signature power, the thing that they can do. The dissonance is usually kind of tied to the resonance, and if they break their dissonance condition too much, they will become outcast and eventually fall. They can stave this off by taking discord, which is basically physical, mental, and spiritual screw-ups that make them, well, you know, that it might appear like physical deformities. It might be mental or psychological problems. But again, the seraphim, the most holy, are creatures of absolute truth. They can roll their resonance and determine whether anything that they see or hear or any statement that is said is true. So they say, okay, I'm going to interview the person, roll it. For the next several minutes, they are tuned into the universe, or the symphony, as it is called in the game, musical. And if they roll even a low check digit, even a low basic roll, they can say, he's lying, he's telling the truth. At higher levels, he thinks he's telling the truth, but what he's saying is actually incorrect. If you roll really, really well, you can see not only is he lying, this is what the truth really is. It's not like going into their head and reading their minds and seeing if they're telling the truth. It's bouncing their words off the universe and seeing what sticks. The problem, they have a pretty nasty dissonance condition. They cannot lie. They cannot lie. They can dance around the truth. They can lie by omission. But if they say a flat-out falsehood, dissonance. A seraph that goes too far and falls becomes a Balsaraph, a twisted mockery of what he once was. Balsaraphs are the ultimate liars. And like any good liars, they believe everything they say while they're saying it. And they can make a roll to force their ridiculous lies on other people and make them believe it too. They get dissonance conditions too. They can't fall any further, but they can get more and more screwed up. And their dissonance condition is if they force their lie on someone and that person makes their will roll and disbelieves it. I think it's something similar to that. I don't remember like the details, but it's like they are very prideful. They do not want their version of the truth to be repudiated. There's other choirs. There's the cherubim. They are the natural protectors. They can attune themselves to things, and they will always know if it's in danger. And it's dissonant for them to allow to just walk away and let their charges be harmed. There's the Ophanim, which are creatures of motion. They can instinctively know the best way to get somewhere, the fastest way to get somewhere. They have to constantly be moving and doing something. If it is dissonant for them to do nothing when action is called for. The Elohim, they are weird. They're like the weird Mr. Spock guys of the angel set. They can read people's emotions, but they cannot act emotionally. They have to do the logical thing. But unlike Mr. Spock, they very much understand emotion. If they roll well, not only can they tell what a person's feeling, they can get a very good sense of why they're feeling it, and even ask the game master, if I do this, how will he respond? The Malachim. The Malachim are the one angels that cannot fall. They are incorruptible. They can get dissonant. They can get more and more fucked up. They are creatures of total honor. They can look at someone and sense their sense of right and wrong, their honor, their honorableness. But their dissonance condition is that you choose these vows that they take. So effectively, they have multiple dissonance conditions, but they're considered the badass warriors. One interesting one is the Kuriotates. I think it's Kuriotates, whatever. I'm not sure the pronunciation. But they don't have bodies. They possess people. They can possess animals. They can possess humans. They bounce from body to body. And it is dissonant for them to leave a host in worse shape than they found it. So they take their charges very seriously. But this is the interesting thing. This is the one, like, the game is full of little things designed to drive game masters crazy, and this will do it. They are multitaskers. They can possess more than one host at a time. Right? There's limits. At a beginning angel could only do, like, say, like maybe one human and a dog, or 9 rats, because it all depends on the amount of forces that they have. But they can work their way up and eventually do 2 humans, you know. So they're multitaskers. So you know what? If you hate it when the party splits up and you have to maintain 2 different things at the same time, well, guess what? That's what the Kuriotates do. And finally, the Mercurians. The Mercurians are the least holy. They're the closest to humanity. They're called the Friends of Man. And they've got one of those resonances that can drive game masters crazy. They can roll to determine the humans' relationships with their world, with their hobbies, their work, their jobs, their families, their relationship with the world. And if they roll well enough, they can pretty much get the entire history of the person's life. And you know that if you're the game master, that Mercurian guy is going to be rolling for every damn person he meets. The dissonance condition is they cannot be violent against humans for any reason, not even in self-defense. They can wail on demons all day long. They can hunt and fish, animals, but they just love humans so much they can't bear to hurt them. They're considered the diplomats of the angels. They might not be hippie pacifists, but it's like if you're it's like you're sitting at a table and if negotiations break down, you don't leap over the table and attack the guy. You just pick up the phone and send in the Malakin. Like I said, most of all the angels except for the Malakin have a demonic equivalent. Usually a warped version, like the Kuriotates, the bodiless ones. When they fall, they become the Shedim, which are the ones that they can only possess one person at a time, but they corrupt them by trying to convince them to do evil. They're compelled to corrupt. Then there's another, but there is a sort of opposite number to the Malakin. There's the Lilum. The Lilum are kind of the opposites in that they were never angels. They were created by, Lilith, the mythological first human, who has basically somehow gotten power in hell, even though she's human. And she's one of those weird little anomalies. She created her own resource called the Lilum, which their power is they can look you in the eye and see what you need. Then they have to go out and do the legwork and fulfill that need. It could be simple, it could be something small like lunch, it could be, something really deep and personal like reuniting you with your lost son who you've been estranged from for years. But once they do that, and if you accept it and say, yes, thank you, right? Then, at any point they've got their hook. At any point in the future, they can come back and lay a geese on you and force you to repay it. Which can be a little nasty. The Malakin, now there is a thing called redemption. If you're a demon, you can be redeemed and become the equivalent angel. You gotta want it. You got to be willing to leave hell and seek out an angel who might kill you and say, hey, can you hook me up? And then they basically they got to take you to an archangel who will basically perform the spiritual equivalent of major surgery, basically getting in there and straightening out your soul. And it basically says if you're a PC and you're doing this, assume you live. But in actual practice, you might not. You got to be serious. You got to want it. So, and it's not something you can accidentally do. You can't, it's one of those things where they really have to get in there and work at it. And if they think that, if they think that you might not make it, if they think you might not hack it as an angel, if you might just fall again, they might just kill you. You never know. It depends on the angel that you get with. Some of them are very compassionate and forgiving, and some of them are very militant. Let's talk about the archangels and the demon princes for that matter. Basically, it's, you remember that line in Predator where Arnold Schwarzenegger says they find the blood and he's like, if it bleeds we can kill it. Well, in old school D&D they were like, well, if it has stats we can kill it. They would give the gods stats, and you would hear stories about all the people say, well, my character leveled up and then we went to Valhalla and I killed Thor. Yay! See how badass I am? Right? Which, you hear these stories. Well, guess what? They came up with a perfect solution in that the archangels and demon princes do not have stats. They give stats. Right? Now, when you create your, we'll stick with the angel side because that's what, what I'd probably want to play or run. But you play, let's say if you say, I want to play a seraph. Okay, that's fine. A seraph of what? Well, you choose your archangel, and each archangel has a word. And that's, like I said, if the choir is like a race, the word is like a class. There are different ones. Like there's Blandine, Archangel of Dreams. Dominic, Archangel of Judgment. He's the internal security of heaven to make sure that the angels stay angelic. So if you're a seraph of judgment, you're the guy that the rest of the party's kind of uncomfortable around because like Eli, Archangel of Creation. There's Jordy, Archangel of Animals. There's Mark, Archangel of Trade. He's into like honest businessmen. Michael, Archangel of War. He, like I said, not all these words are what you'd think of as angelic. Michael is very much into war heroes, people who are willing to sacrifice all to protect what they believe in. Stuff like that. Novalis, Archangel of Flowers. She is the hippie pacifist. And Ives, Archangel of Destiny. Destiny is an interesting one because one of the things is that every human in the game has a destiny and a fate. But to put it another way, a destiny and a fate. Basically, the destiny is the highest thing you can achieve. The thing that if you achieve your destiny, you've pretty much got a lock on getting into heaven. The fate is the opposite. It's the lowest you can sink. Some people achieve both, and that's kind of a crapshoot where they go where they die. They do mention the possibility of reincarnation, whereas you're basically another ride on the merry-go-round. But it's like so basically you get an attunement. If you're, say, a seraph of lightning, which covers technology and modern stuff, you get a power, like you have a photographic memory and you can conjure an image of anything you've seen or heard to show other people. Or a seraph of Michael gets basically their opponents, when they get into battles, their opponents get big penalties to dodge. Right, so they get a big combat advantage. So it's like there's like all these lists of powers that are basically unique abilities that if you are a certain choir of a certain word, you get a cool power for it. Then you can also buy attunements, general attunements like that any choir can buy from their archangel. Like there's one, like I remember seeing in one of the books, there's one called, I think it was called Sheath, and it was Lawrence, Archangel of the Sword, who is the current commander of God's armies. Michael used to be, there's a whole history in the books about it, about how Michael used to be, but then he left for certain reasons. And now this other guy called Lawrence, the Archangel of the Sword, is in charge of God's armies. And like one of his abilities, his attunements he can grant is called Sheath, which is basically like manga anime hammer space that you can store weapons in. You know, like you've got a gun, you like make it disappear, and then go through airport security, get to where you're going, bring it back. You can do it with swords, you can do it with bazookas. It has to be a weapon because the powers tend to be a bit more conceptual than logical. Like if someone says, well, I have this block of wood and I'm going to put it in my sheath because I could hit someone with it. No, is it considered a weapon by most people? No, it's considered a block of wood. No. But then you have what's called distinctions, which are other cool powers you can gain, and they come with basically a title and a rank. And you can't buy these. You got to earn them. You got to like go on missions and do cool stuff and have your boss say, "That was cool. Here's your rank and your cool power that comes with it." Okay, that's the basic concept. How does it play out? Well, first of all, it's very, very difficult to die. If you're on Earth and you're killed, you go to heaven or hell. In which case, you kind of got it, and you spend some time in trauma, curl up in a ball sucking your thumb. Then, you got to go to your boss and ask for another physical vessel and get sent back to Earth. Your angelic form may not look remotely human. Seraphim tend to look like winged serpents with 6 eyes. The Mercurians tend to look very human. The Curiotates, the bodiless angels, tend to look like Lovecraftian nightmares of arms of human body, floating human body parts in constant turmoil. They're like people tend to flip out and go into like panic attacks when they see them. That sort of thing. Like the Ophanim, the motion angels, look like giant burning wheels of non-consuming fire. Like I said, not remotely human, but they take on human forms when they go to Earth. So it's so they have what's called a vessel, which basically means if you get killed and go to heaven, and then you got to go to your boss and say, "Hey, can I have another vessel?" Usually, and that's kind of iffy in the game terms, because usually you pay character points to buy a vessel, and depending on how many you spend, indicates how tough your vessel is. Your levels can range from 1 to 6. Most of your powers and abilities often do range from 1 to 6. So your vessels, and once you lose it, it's up to the game master. You might get another one for free without having to pay for it if you lost it heroically. But if you just start blazing through them, well, or throwing them away like they're nothing, then the game master might say, "You know what? You might just make a new character. They're not sending you back." But the cosmology of the Nomine. Like I said, a lot of your stats are tied to aspects of the world. You have 6 stats cut in 3 categories. You have the corporeal stats, strength and agility; the ethereal stats, intelligence and precision; and celestial stats, will and perception. And in the game, there are 3 worlds. There's the corporeal world, which is the really real world. There's the ethereal world, which is also known as the Marches, which is the dream realms, where humans go to dream. And angels normally don't have to sleep. They can will themselves to sleep, and go to the marches, in which case they don't dream. They just wander around the marches and they see all these human dreams floating around. And with the right attunements or songs can even go into these dreams and, appear before the human and say, yay, like I grant you a message, or mess with the dreams or whatever. Then there's the celestial realms, which is heaven and hell, right? And it's like I said, there's the whole cosmology behind it, and then there's a whole bunch of books out for In Nomine. Most of them are out of print, but you can still you can still buy them as PDFs. If you don't like PDFs, if you like hard copy, I'm sure you can find them in various sources. You could at least find the core book in various, used book sources. You could probably pretty easy to find if you know where to look. But there's a whole bunch of books out for it. There was like a series of 5 like basically adventure module types called the Revelation Cycle. They weren't very good. They were early stuff. There were some player's guides: the Angelic Player's Guide, the Infernal Player's Guide, the Corporeal Player's Guide, and the Ethereal Player's Guide. There's the Superiors books, which give in-depth descriptions of all the different superiors, archangels, and demon princes, and what it's like to work for them. Then there's the Liber books, which are basically, the Liber Reliquarium, the Book of Relics, which are basically the magic items of the games. They're like, the superpowered relic thing. The Liber Canticorum, the Book of Songs. Cool stuff like that. There's a Game Master's Guide. There's a location guide called You Are Here. A lot of stuff out there. I basically got a complete set over there because, like I said, back in the 90s, I was seriously into the game. There was even one year they put out an In Nomine calendar, which I dutifully hung on my wall for a year until it ran out, and now I've lost it, which sucks because it had good art. All in all, it's one of those games. Like I said, it's on my list of games that I would love to dig out and play. And it takes, like people who are hardcore religious might take issue with with the liberties it takes with religion. One of the interesting things is there was I used to be a member on this mailing list before they moved over to forums and stuff. That there was this mailing list I was on for a long time, and people would post. It almost became, because all these different superiors and archangels and demon princes with all these very iconic personalities. So people on the mailing list would write all these weird, crazy fanfics about all these superiors, and it almost became like a fanfic world of itself, and it was awesome and fun and fascinating to read. But there are certain terms that appeared on the mailing list that actually got into the later books. Like they would describe if you were the game master and you were doing a campaign, they would use terms like brightness and contrast, which for the older people will recognize those as knobs on old TV sets that you could turn. So it was like, oh, okay, are you going to turn the brightness knob or the contrast knob? A high brightness is God's in his heaven and all's right with the world. Eventually we will win the war and defeat evil. A low brightness is pretty much we're fighting a losing battle against, and eventually the world is going to be damned. The contrast knob, on the other hand, is, high contrast is angels wear white, demons wear black. It's very easy to tell the difference. Low contrast is it's all shades of gray. Stuff like that. You have but one interesting aspect that they took a line from the old Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where these philosophers were trying to get the giant computer shut down, who was trying to figure out the nature of the universe, the ultimate question. And basically they said this one line is they don't want to stay up all night pondering whether there is a God and then have a computer give you his phone number the next day. And they basically said this line: we demand rigidly defined areas of doubt and uncertainty. So, and anyway, what ended up happening was the the game came up with lists on the website and what they called canon, doubt, and uncertainty. Things that they flat out said, we are never going to flat out say. We're going to leave this for your campaign. Like, you know, like the nature of Jesus. Does Jesus exist in your campaign? You know, like, is he still around? You know, this was, you know, because the game is largely Christian, but it does throw in some Jewish elements. It does throw in some Muslim elements, and you know, just in some mythological elements. You go to the, you know, there are mythological things. Like if you go to the marches, they have what they call the, you know, once you get way past all the dreamers, you find all the old gods that people worshipped. You know, it's like simply because they believed them into existence. So there's one theory that God is really just a jumped up ethereal who, you know, officially say no, God is God. You know, that's what the angels and demons will tell you, or at least the angels, and say no, yeah, just because Thor and Zeus can be found out there in very low-powered versions wandering the marches doesn't mean that they're real. That they're just created by humanity's beliefs and dreams and desires, whereas God exists whether you believe in him or not. That was, you know, again, so that's left canon, doubt, and uncertainty, the actual nature of God compared to the ethereals, that sort of thing. And it lets you, you know, so it does give you a room to tinker with the setting, right? And again, there are concepts that your hardcore Christians will find a little bit disconcerting. Your hardcore religious types, you know. Of course, you know, I've heard about a lot of people who are religious but still love playing the game because, you know, they see it as a fictionalized version. They're able to tell, you know, reality from fantasy. Which, you know, it's all in all, it's on my list of games that I would love to trot out and play. You know, it's not high on my list. There's like a lot of newer things out there that I would, you know, that I think are more interesting. But it's one that I really loved back in the day, and it's still got a big, you know, place in my heart. And you know, I've run it a couple of times in the distant past, and it was pretty cool. So I'm gonna move out before my video gets too much longer, and Nomine, go to Steve Jackson Games website and take a look around. It's like I said, you know, you can buy the PDF version of it, and pretty much every book out for it has been converted over to PDF. It was a long project, but it's been done. And talk to you later. Have a good one.